Well, welcome everybody. My name is Tony Armour. Welcome to the Dallas Film Podcast.
My name is Andrew Vela. Welcome.
And we have some fun guests with us today. So I'm going to just throw it over to you guys on the Zoom there and let you introduce yourselves.
My name is Shaunette. I'm the program director for the EarthX Film and Music Festival.
And my name is Sollee. I am a performing artist at the EarthX Film Festival. I'm based in Louisville, Kentucky as a cellist and singer-songwriter. Most recently, I do a lot of film composing, and my most recent film was a film called Maggie Moore's that came out earlier this year.
Awesome. Well,
Amazing.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today. So we are talking primarily about EarthX Film Festival because it is coming up soon. We are recording here in October, and the festival is coming up in just a couple of weeks. So this episode is going to come out right before the festival. Tell us the exact dates of EarthX.
The festival is going to be October 20th to 22nd. We're hosting it at 3 different venues in the Bishop Arts District and Oak Cliff neighborhoods. So we have 3 big nights of programming.
And what venues is the festival going to be at?
Friday night on the 20th is going to be at the Texas Theater. And then Saturday, it's such a cool venue. And then we're moving over to Arts Mission Oak Cliff on Saturday, and we'll close things out at the Kessler Theater on Sunday.
Nice.
Those are all really cool venues here in Dallas. And so how long have you been programming the film? Now you do film and music. You're programming both aspects for the festival? Yeah,
it's a format that we kind of adopted at an event that we did at South by Southwest, and it worked really well. So we've kind of been expanding on that. We realize, facilitating environmental conversations, especially in certain parts of Texas, is tricky, and we want it to be a fun event. So we build it out with music, film, conversation, and we start programming for each year pretty much after the last one wraps. Last year our festival was a bit earlier. We had it in May, and it's pretty close to another flagship event that EarthX does called the Expo in Fair Park, and we've pushed it to closer to Half Earth Day to give a little space between those, and it's also a nice cooler time of year when folks are hopefully a little more willing to leave their houses.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
But yeah, we've got all these venues have a lot of history to them, and we're excited to kind of build on that. We're going to be exploring a lot of different themes that are kind of adjacent to environmentalism, and I feel like our team, especially our programming crew, we really believe that environmental solutions are very intersectional with other issues. So we've gotten really creative with the storytelling that we've brought to the platform, and we're stoked to share it with our audience.
That's awesome. And Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about your participation here at EarthX?
Well, this will be my second EarthX film, and I'm coming in as a performing artist, but also as an activist who uses the arts to grow affection around all kinds of issues, both social and environmental based issues. Historically, I've done a lot of work around Appalachia, mountaintop removal, strip mining, and helping raise awareness about that, protecting the waterways. So I've got a long history of using my music to connect people around issues. And I'm excited to use my music to help kind of create space for conversation and hold space for any sort of maybe discomfort that might come from the films and their topics. And really just bring people together. That's it.
And so you'll be performing during the festival, correct?
Yeah, I'll be performing at the end. I'll be performing on Saturday after the showing of the films, and hopefully that'll grease the skids of conversation. And I play cello and I sing, and I'm connected to film by, originally I started making music for environmental documentaries, and that has led to a career of making music for feature films as well. And it's a real honor to be pulled into that. I didn't get pulled into film composing for any other reason than my values around activism. So
well, and that's
it's nice
interesting.
that it's coming full circle.
Yeah, I was going to ask how you get pulled from music into composing and working on films, because I know there are a lot of musicians out there who want to make that transition, but that sometimes can be a difficult transition to make, and even unsure of what that entry point is. And I think it's different for everybody.
It's definitely different for everyone. And of course, the industry is changing fast and frequently. For me, it was not a very intentional process. It was being an activist, being a cellist, being someone who was willing to share my music, often for free, with people who were making films about things that I cared about. So really values first. And then over time, people either saw those films, or the people that worked on those films worked on other films, and they just, kept suggesting me, and I would say yes and learn the ropes as I would go. And nowadays that has led to, scoring 2 or 3 feature films a year, while also being a touring musician, and a father of 3 kiddos.
All of that, it definitely gives you a very, very busy schedule. So then transitioning back to talking about EarthX a little bit, let's talk about, how EarthX came about. So I'm new to Dallas and new to Texas in general. So EarthX is new to me. So I'd like to hear more about the festival itself and really sort of the goals and everything. So 20th, 22nd, that's only really a few days. Talk about, how that is kind of structured and is really grown over the years.
The film festival started in 2017, and it started as kind of a branch of that expo that I mentioned that is kind of the pillar event for EarthX, and then split off as its own event a couple years later. And last year we hosted it in the Arts District, the main Arts District in downtown Dallas. And it was early in the year. The venues were really large, and it was lovely. It was a really cool event. But this year we decided to kind of hone in and work with some smaller venues, and the community around Bishop Arts and Oak Cliff. It's so involved and so conducive to this kind of conversation. We've also really pared down the programming. We, throughout the weekend, we only have, I think, 12 films showing, shorts. We have 1 feature. And so we're really trying to focus and build out those 3 events. The first evening on Friday, we are screening a film called Common Ground, and it's made by Josh and Rebecca Tickell. They're the folks who made Kiss the Ground, which got a lot of play a couple of years ago. They do a lot of work around environmental issues. This film in particular focuses on regenerative farming and soil health and that movement. And then that'll be also paired with a concert from Donna Missel that we're super excited about. And our goal is to help folks to see things that might be, we want the environmental movement to feel accessible. We want people to see what's around them and changes that they can make at home. And also, there's a lot that tie us to the environment. It's not composting and recycling are all really important and really great things, but then there's also just this love of nature that ties everyone to the environment in its own way. Our second evening is focused on an immersive environmental experience, and Ben's part of that. He's got this incredible sound, and doing it in this venue. This, for those who don't know, Arts Mission Oak Cliff is an old converted church that's become a venue, an art space, a community space, and there's something about the way that sound fills that venue, that sanctuary, that's going to be just really immersive, and it'll envelop our audience in a way that we're really stoked about. We're working with Lightwear Labs to do some projection mapping in there. So it's going to bring in a whole visual component that people will walk into. And then the films for that evening will touch on issues around, mental health, connection to the outdoors, accessibility. We've titled it The Heartbeats Outside. It's kind of a double entendre to how we feel when we are outdoors, but also what happens when we tune into what nature is trying to tell us and the healing that can occur when we do that. And then the closing evening is called Where Passion Meets Purpose, and it's got an assortment of short films that kind of follow folks who have found that intersection of something like a cause or an issue that they care really deeply about, and then not only educating those around them, but giving access and purpose to those issues and helping to elevate other people telling similar stories. And we'll close out that evening with music from Danielle Ponder, who's a lot of folks, she's kind of on the rise. She's a really amazing soul singer who left a career in law. She was a public defender in Rochester, New York, and, had a really great thing going with that. But then it wasn't serving her soul in the way that she needed. And she followed her calling, and it took a lot of courage to do that. So she speaks a lot to the courage of, making life changes, and it kind of complements that program really well too.
Well, can you talk
so yeah, we've got a lot going on.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all good. Sounds good. Can you tell us a little bit about your programming strategy? Like, how is it that, what goes into you deciding what projects you're going to screen? What is the submission process like, or is there a submission process? Is it, primarily you, going outside and curating? Are you using, Film Freeway? I know I'm getting into the weeds a little bit, but I think since we are a film, podcast, this is something a lot of our interests our listeners are interested in.
Yeah, we do. We have rolling submissions on Film Freeway all year, up until like the end of July, I think is when our submission window closed. And then we also, go to a lot of other festivals to scout films. So it's kind of a hybrid of the two. We review all unsolicited submissions, and then we also go out to see what's out there and folks that are already telling these stories, having these conversations, and seeing what might align with our audience in Dallas. We want to build really well-rounded and thoughtful conversations. I know I mentioned intersectionality earlier. And so we want to show films that folks can also see themselves in. A lot of different people can see themselves in. We want them to to feel empowered by the programming and to feel invested as well. And these issues, some of them are issues, and some of them are, like, I'd say some of the stories that we choose to share are also just celebrations of the work being done to protect the planet, but also to build community and to make community access more accessible to more folks, I think. So it's not just adventure films. It's not just conservation films. We are celebrating activism. We're celebrating representation. We like to, it's not like, I think we're really intentional about not just showcasing doom and gloom stories, because it's really easy sometimes in these conversations to do that, because it is really scary, a lot of what's happening out there. So we want people to leave feeling hopeful and encouraged and empowered. That's
great. And Ben, how did you first get involved with EarthX? What was your first introduction to EarthX that now you are? Because I remember listening, right, and our short conversation, you've been before. So what does that look like for you in getting first involved and now continuing to be a part of it?
I can't exactly remember the first year I went to EarthX, but I was connected to it through some friends at Mountain Film, which is another fantastic festival that does some good work connecting people with nature and the environment. And I think we'd worked together at Mountain Film to build in some live music performances in between films and had some success. And so we came back to EarthX and experimented with that. We also did some workshops, performing and working with some kids, which was a nice thing to get the youth involved. But I think that a lot of it's just being an artist who incorporates that advocacy and activism into both my music and my, touring and production. So that's really it. It's values. I think in this world, this day and age, you can have a ton of skills. You can be one of the best editors in the world, right? You can be one of the best cinematographers in the world, and there's still yet more story to tell when you're working on building relationships and creating new works, because there is a social element to all this.
Yeah,
there is. People are going to see what you're doing out there in the world, and for better or worse, that your identity's tied into that.
Yeah, and you talk about your passion for advocacy and activism. are there any particular issues that you yourself are more focused on than others, things that you're really interested in that you're trying to, bring more light to?
Well, gosh, I mean, I have continually worked on protecting land and water, especially here in Appalachia, where we have a long history of extractive industries, destroying a lot of land and groundwater resources. And then, of course, we all live downstream. If you're talking about mountaintop removal strip mining, right? That's where all the headwaters begin. And so if we poison that, it comes down to all of us. It's very important to protect those. Recently, I've been focusing on some social issues. I have done a lot of music touring by bicycle, where I put my cello on the side of my bicycle and travel around the country. Over about a 5-year period, we did around 6,000 miles touring and playing shows. And in that, I learned a lot about city infrastructure and livability infrastructure, and how cities can live or die on people's ability to move about them with and without a car and good public transit. So I would do a lot of work around that. And then lately I've been, just because of, my personal connections to folks who are working in the trans and queer community, just trying to do a little bit more on being more outspoken about that, making sure that when I'm programming, whether it's for my shows or an event that I'm hired to produce, making sure that the stage is shining a light on all the members in the community. So a little bit of everything, really, but a big focus on environmental work in my music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you piqued my interest with the 6,000 miles on the bike, and then, really getting to see what cities are like from that perspective. Can maybe just touch on some of your favorite cities or something, or ones that you think are doing the best job at, being accessible from that perspective?
Well, certainly there's cities that have invested in bicycle infrastructure and more importantly, like livability infrastructure, which means dedicated paths for people to be able to walk and ride their bicycles on, streets that are open for walking, slower cars, limiting congestion. A lot of these things are really important, not only for people being able to move around, but being able to breathe good, clean air, and to be able to be less lonely. The U.S. Surgeon General put out a huge report on loneliness and lack of belonging. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we don't run into each other on our city streets because we're in cars. They rode their bicycles. They worked at odd times, and that meant that they were out there on their doorsteps, out in the streets, hanging out, and they would wave and say hello and invite us to the fish fry and, all the things. It felt like real community. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to not having windows on a bicycle. You can't roll them up when you're in a bad neighborhood. You have to be with people. And I think that is a remedy for a lot of the struggles that we're having right now with despair and loneliness in this country. It's just getting out there and walking the streets, riding your bicycles, being present for each other.
That's interesting.
I love the way you speak to that.
And so using your cello to promote activism, what are you hoping that audiences get out of your performance during the festival here in Dallas?
Well, I think music is a tremendous tool for revealing, opening people's hearts to issues. And music is, short of taking somebody to that toxic dump site or that, protest site, right? You have to grow their affection for that issue, that place, that cause in some other way. And I think the arts are really good. Data and science is fantastic for the head. The arts is where you affect people at the heart level. So in my performance at EarthX on Saturday evening, I look to create resonance. That's always the thing, right? Like, how can I use the music to open people up to that? I also try to create a sense of community. A lot of times I use very old strategies to get people feeling together. This is call and answer. This is singing along. This is, sharing rhythm together. These things get overlooked a lot because they're just kind of like commonplace at music shows, or at least they used to be before so much music became electronic and programmed, right? But there's a physiological response that individuals have when they sing along and call and answer and clap along. And there's a collective response where you can like sync up people's hearts. And when people are feeling that stability, that togetherness, that sense of belonging, then hard conversations are really possible. Because you can't ask people to take risks unless they feel stable, safe.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, and I think that's where now post COVID, people being able to be back in person for concerts as opposed to there was obviously the trend of the online or the Zoom concert and that kind of thing, and it's great, but it's obviously not the same as being able to be there in a room with people and being able to interact with the musician yourself, and so let's talk a little bit more about the festival itself, about EarthX, and sort of some of that interactivity that takes place. And, obviously the films are there, and seeing a film in a communal environment is a different feeling than, sitting at home and watching it when you're not there too. Talk a little bit about your programming and why people should come out to the festival and, not sit at home and watch stuff on TV or whatever.
I think there's definitely a magic of sitting in a venue with a group of people who are all taking something in together. And then also, of course, the extra level of the Q&As and the panels and the film guests that we'll have there in person. Also, the musicians, folks like Ben, who have their own stories that add so much depth to these programs. We also, on Friday and Sunday, we'll have after parties for each program. So the first one on Friday is going to be over at Casa del Vegano, which is just a few doors down from the Texas Theater. And so we'll have a space for folks to kind of gather after they take in this really cool info and all this stuff to go decompress and talk with each other, the community building, interacting with our film guests. That's one of my favorite parts of the format is there's not so much separation between the folks that we are bringing in to share their stories and the audience. Like there will be opportunity to interact. Sunday night after that screening at the Kessler, we're going to go to the Wild Detectives afterwards for some music and more conversation. We're really trying to build spaces, kind of like Ben said, for further community building, further interaction, so that folks kind of have others to process with. And I think that is something that's really special about this kind of environment is that you're all kind of co-processing together. For the Saturday event that Ben is part of, we also have partnered with Dive Coastal Cuisine, and they're going to do a food service component out in the side garden of Arts Mission. And there will be, they've really thoughtfully curated this menu with kind of sustainable stories around each dish that they're serving. And so as you go around and eat this delicious food, you can kind of get information about where it was grown, how it was grown, and they've kind of themed each one around some sort of environmental component. And that's not something that you're going to see at home. Mm-hmm. And, for this Saturday evening, this immersive environmentalism experience that we've tried to create, we've really truly built it around just being a unique experience that you're not going to see a lot of places. It really kind of strays from a standard film festival event. It's not just a theater. It's in a really special space that we're building out for this. And it's going to be very, hopefully very powerful in that way. And the same goes for all of the venues that we're working in. I think the music will add a lot to that as well. I kind of spoke a little bit to our themes. Most Saturday and Sunday are both going to feature short film blocks. Mm-hmm. And the only feature film that we're showing will be on Friday. And I feel like access to a lot of these short films is a lot more limited. You don't see them as much on streaming platforms. Yeah. And you're only going to find these at a festival. Mm-hmm. And Sunday night as well at the Kessler, that one's really stacked with a ton of film guests. So we're going to have some really thoughtful Q&As. It's a really great opportunity for folks to, if they have questions after they take something in, they can engage in a conversation that can give them more context that they wouldn't get at home.
Yeah, and short films are really great. I think sometimes people forget how good short films can be. A lot of times you can watch blocks of short films and they're a lot better than even some of the features that you're seeing. And Ben, I'm sorry I talking and cut you off there.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to kind of add for folks listening who might be on the fence of going to another event, especially one that's based around climate and environmental stuff. It's just, we're clearly seeing a lot of disruption in the world right now. And that can be really disheartening, and it's like hard to know where to start. And here at EarthX, they've curated and gathered some of the best storytellers that have spent thousands of hours distilling these messages and stories into something that will benefit your heart and mind. So definitely encourage people to come, because there's going to be a lot to learn. And then, of course, for other filmmakers, learning the craft of telling these really difficult stories about adaptation and change is like one of the best things you can learn to do. So I definitely encourage folks to come out all nights. We're going to have a really cool immersive night on Saturday, but come on out.
No, I mean, look, it's a little everything: film, food, music, fun. I'm assuming there'll be a few cocktails to be had at some of the after parties. Everybody likes a good cocktail once in a while, so it all sounds like a great weekend in general. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you here in Dallas, excited to have you at EarthX, and looking forward to checking out your performances.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
And Laura, before we wrap up, why don't you tell us any final words that people should know before EarthX? Where can they get tickets? Where can they get information about the festival? And what are the must-see things that they have to do over the weekend?
Of course, I think all of the programs are must-see. I think they're going to be really fun and thoughtful. You can find all the details at earthxfilmfestival.org, and tickets are on sale. We have different tiers for each night. Until October 19th, all the tickets are 10% off. So I would definitely encourage y'all to grab your tickets early, save a few bucks on those. And we hope that you come out and join us.
Well, thank you so much. We're looking forward to it. Thank you for joining us on the Dallas Film Podcast. And everybody go out there and get to EarthX the weekend of October 20th to 22nd.
Thanks so much, you guys. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.